Hey, everybody. I'm back.
We didn't even notice you were gone, Caesar.
Oh, yeah? Well, So I've been away for a while, right? Away from podcasting. And it's kind of like, I think I talked about this before, where I think it was Suzanne Santos was on Joe Rogan, and she was talking about how one of her friends disappeared from social media, and she assumed, oh no, what's wrong with him? And then she came to the conclusion that, you know what, that's a stupid thing to think, that something's wrong with somebody because I don't see them on social media. And in that same way, yes, I've been gone for a while, but things have been good. So if you thought I was gone because the podcast was over and finally you don't have to listen to me anymore, I'm sorry, tough luck. Because I'm back and you have to listen to me again, or you could just push stop and then you wouldn't have to listen to me. But you're not going to do that because this is an awesome podcast, right? And all 5 of my listeners, I'm sure they've missed me horribly. I'm not joking when I say 5. That's literally, actually, let me look at my numbers here real quick. All right, here's my numbers. And these are awful. These are pathetic. My episode with the most listens in the last 12 months was actually recorded in 2021 with my friend Fred. And that one has 34 listens in the last 12 months. Coming in second is Rock and Roll Really Dead with 22 listens. Let's get to some of the more recent ones, which are much more dire. All right. Cats and Dogs, which I thought was a pretty funny one. It's got 10 listens. The Toddler in the Park Bench, which I put so much effort into. 10 listens. Life After the Pandemic, the last one before I took my break. 9 listens. So it would seem that I have about 9 or 10 listeners out there. I'm sorry if you missed me. I mean, I guess I'm assuming that half of those weren't accidental listens.
Ooh, The Great Beginner Galactic. Life After the Pandemic. That sounds so cool.
And then they click on it and they're like, what the heck is this?
Just some idiot ranting about politics. I thought it was going to be an awesome sci-fi show.
But I've been away doing good things, I think. So for those of you who don't listen to the show regularly, the 5 who accidentally clicked on this, thinking it was a sci-fi podcast. Oh, and how to start a podcast part 2. It always gets like really great numbers, even today. I'm not sure why part 2 got better numbers than part 1 through 7, but it is what it is. And my old podcast, which I abandoned 2 years ago at this point, it's making a comeback. And I haven't recorded any new episodes in 2 years. And I think the reason for that is because the Google search engine has changed in a way where if you type in Cleveland Podcast, which was the name of the podcast, the Cleveland Podcast, suddenly it's like one of the first things that comes up. And it wasn't that way when we were actually recording it. That would have helped a lot, Google. Thanks a lot. But anyways, back to where I've been. I actually, I talked about this some in my previous 2 podcasts. I've really made 2 since I moved to Utah. I got laid off from a job in Florida, so I had to start a new job all over again. And I moved 2,000 or 3,000 miles away from Florida. So there was some adjustment there. And as much as I was already planning to move out west anyway, and the layoff really didn't bother me at all, it did affect me in a way where it took some time to get back into a routine. And so I recorded 2 episodes since I've been here, and I think one was in June and the other one was in July. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but it was like 1 per month. I used to try to do it every 2 weeks. But then summer rolled around, and during that whole transition from Florida to Utah, I gained about 10 or 15 pounds. And it's hard. I noticed when I moved to Florida and I noticed when I moved to Utah that I gained weight both times. And I mean, you move to a new city and you got to figure out the new grocery stores and new restaurants. And I don't eat at restaurants a lot, but in 2010, I think it was, I decided to stop eating fast food. And I really haven't eaten a lot of fast food ever since. But more specifically, it was Wendy's, Taco Bell, Sonic, Burger King, KFC, and McDonald's that I swore I was never going to eat at again. And for the most part, I've done an excellent job, and I've only stepped foot inside those places to take a leak. You know, I see McDonald's as a bathroom these days. Something I've always wondered is, why don't restaurants and grocery stores and, whatever, why don't they leave like some paper towels and some cleaner somewhere in the bathroom where a responsible person could clean up either after themselves or after the nasty person who came in before them. But no, there's no cleaning supplies in most bathrooms, most public bathrooms. And then once it gets gross, you have to wait until somebody who works there comes around and cleans it up. Just seriously, put some cleaning spray and some paper towels in there and let people clean it up themselves, right? Anyways, I moved to Utah. And so, like I said, officially my fast food ban was from those like 5 or 6 places that I named before. So there was a loophole. I haven't banned Del Taco or In-N-Out Burger from the list of places that I can't go. And the Del Taco thing's okay because I was actually considering like removing Taco Bell from that list of places I can't ever go, because Taco Bell's not actually that bad for you if you eat the right things. I worked at Taco Bell for a few months before I got fired, but people told me, oh man, once you work at Taco Bell, you'll never want to eat there again. Nope. I loved it even more. I'd make all these amazing like things that weren't on the menu. The double-decker taco was a big deal at the time. So I would make double-decker tacos and then I would put sour cream and nacho cheese on top of it. And it was so good. So the double-decker taco is a soft-shell burrito. If it still exists, I haven't been to Taco Bell and since 2010, I wouldn't even know. So it's a soft shell taco with refried beans on it. And then you take that soft shell taco and you wrap it around a hard shell taco. So the combination of the soft shell taco and the hard shell taco is surprisingly tasty. And then you fill it up with your normal stuff. But for some reason, just that combination, and then you put the nacho cheese and the sour cream on it. Oh, it's so good. I should go back and request one of those if I weren't. Or maybe I can do it at Del Taco. Maybe I'll just go get a job at Del Taco, work there for a day, make my specialty taco, and then quit. But man, that was good. But anyways, I keep getting distracted. So yeah, I actually went on a diet one year, and eating Taco Bell was a big part of that diet, and I lost a lot of weight. I would go into the Taco Bell and I'd get the calorie-free lemonade, like the diet lemonade Minute Maid. And then I would get 3 tacos. And that was a big part of my weight loss. I'm actually going to look it up. Taco Bell nutrition information. All right. So a crunchy taco from Taco Bell has 170 calories. So you could get 3 of those. What's the math there? 510 calories total, including the 0-calorie lemonade. So that was actually a good way to get a meal and still stay relatively healthy. So that was one of the reasons why I've been considering taking Taco Bell off that list of banned restaurants, is because I can actually eat there and it really isn't that unhealthy. But it's once you get away from the tacos, that's when you start getting into trouble. So I'm just looking at the list here. The Chalupa Supreme with beef is 360 calories. The Cheesy Gordita Crunch is 490 calories. So there's almost as many calories in a Cheesy Gordita Crunch as there is in 3 tacos. A beefy crunch burrito has 460. A bean burrito has 350. A beefy 5-layer burrito has 490 calories. A Nachos Bel Grande with beef has 730 calories. Quesadilla, chicken quesadilla has 520 calories. But the problem with that is I'd go in and I'd for the tacos, and then eventually, like some of the other stuff started creeping into the diet. So with my loophole of moving to Utah, and there's fast food restaurants that aren't on my banned list, In-N-Out Burger and Del Taco started creeping into my diet. Del Taco, not a big deal. In-N-Out Burger is so very good. And oh yeah, if you've listened to this podcast in the past, you're like, weren't you a vegetarian? Not really when I moved. I actually went back to it recently, but when I first moved, again, I guess I'd be pescatarian, right? It is so hard to find food that doesn't have meat in it, especially when you're traveling, especially when you've moved to a new place. But holy crap, I've heard about In-N-Out Burger my entire life. But I had never imagined it would be so good, so greasy. And so I probably went there maybe 3 times since I moved here before I went on my strict diet a couple of months ago. It was so amazing every time. I was not impressed at all before I left Florida. I went to Whataburger. I mean, it was a good burger and everything, but it was like $7 or $8. And it wasn't $7 or $8 good. So I moved to a Mexican neighborhood in Utah. And there's like a Mexican restaurant like every 5 feet. But I keep going back to Del Taco. I'm going to go to at least one Mexican restaurant every month, I think. Just to support the locals instead of Big Taco.
Big Taco's keeping us down, man.
But anyways, after I gained those like 10, 15 pounds, whatever it was, I had to go on a strict diet. Went back to my strict fasting, intermittent fasting, where I don't eat for 20 hours a day. And I did that for 6 weeks straight. And I lost about 9.5 pounds during that time. And I'd lost a few before that, before I got really strict. So I probably lost about 12 pounds, which is probably about what I gained before that. So I'm basically back to where I was at the end of the summer. And the point of me telling you that is that that's why I haven't been podcasting for the last month. You see, when I'm intermittent fasting, I don't drink alcohol. And when I don't drink alcohol, I'm not very fun. In fact, I wasn't very fun at all for a lot of reasons for the last month and a half, because my work is very exhausting. My new job is a pretty exhausting job, but I only work 4 days a week. So I get long 3-day weekends, which is nice. But what I've been doing ever since I got really strict about losing weight was I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go climb a mountain. I did a bunch of really cool peaks this summer. I did, if anybody's around here knows it, Deseret Peak, Mount Olympus. That one was pretty cool. They were all pretty cool. Gobbler's Knob, which is an interesting name. I was hoping to get my knob gobbled up there. It didn't happen. But basically, between the job, which is physically exhausting, and the hiking that I would do every day, like 3 days a week, I'd just get home and I had no energy for anything else. And that's fine. I'm sorry to disappoint the 5 of you who listen. Which brings me to the direction I want to go with this podcast. I think I'm going to stop trying to do a show every 2 weeks. I'm only going to do one when it's ready. I mean, here's the thing. I listen to a lot of people online, and they talk about, what's the key for a successful podcast. And I really believe in good audio quality, and that's something I really try hard to do. And that's another reason why I didn't podcast for a little while. I'm in a new place, and I had to find a good place to podcast and the right time of day and all that kind of stuff. I recorded my last episode at the local library, which has like a audio video room with a green screen, which is really cool. But even there, it's not really soundproof, which to make an audio video room that's not soundproof seems kind of like they're missing the point. But hey, it's just cool that libraries have that stuff, Libraries aren't what they used to be. I used to go to libraries to read, to get books when I was a kid. I go to the libraries all the time, and I almost never get books. There are so many things that you can do at the library. They have like free Photoshop and Illustrator and microphones and audio equipment and all this stuff that you can do that has nothing to do with reading. And if you've ever heard me try to read on either this podcast or the Cleveland podcast, you know that I am not a very good reader. Give me the audiobook version. I don't even really like audiobooks. I have all this time to listen to audiobooks when I'm hiking and working and stuff, and I just don't do it. Books bore me. That's probably like my most cavemanish, idiotic opinion is that books are boring. I love the thought of books. I love that other people read. I love that other people are intelligent, but I'm not. I love surrounding myself with intelligent people. I told someone recently, I'm a really nerdy person, but I'm not smart. So it's like I get all of the bad qualities about being dorky, but none of the payoff. Like I'm really curious and I love to learn things, but I forget it like almost immediately. So During the hurricane last year, hurricanes, plural, people ask me, how did you deal with living in Florida and all the hurricanes and stuff? And it's like, well, I mean, I didn't get the brunt of it, and I don't want to make light of the fact that a lot of people were had their homes destroyed, and some people died. So it was really bad in some places in Florida. But where I was in Florida, they just sent us home for 3 days. And when Ian came through, it was 3 days up against the weekend. So I had like 5 days in a row off. And I did 3 things during those 5 days. Actually, probably the first 3 during the hurricane. I day drank, I napped a lot, and I made podcasts. It was so fun. Like when people are like, how do you deal with hurricanes? I'm like, I loved it. I did my 3 favorite things. But in hindsight, I go back and listen to those episodes and they were kind of cringy. Specifically the one about Didymus and I think SpaceX and Dimorphos. I think that could have been a really good one, but I was just drinking while I did it. And it was not scripted. And this episode is not scripted. But I think what needs to happen in the future is good episodes need to be scripted. And that Didymus Dimorphos asteroid thing, that was a perfect example of why. Because it could have been really good, but I just sounded stupid because I hadn't researched any of it. I hadn't scripted any of it. And I just kind of sounded like a dumbass, which I am. So it's not like it represents me poorly, but, well, it does represent me poorly, but not inaccurately. I did those 2 episodes, The Trouble with Podcasting and The Trouble with Podcasting Part 2. And in the second one, I talked a lot about why podcasters still podcast even though their show's not successful. And for me, it's something that comes from within. It's just like it has to get out, It's less about you listening, and I'm sorry. This is not about, it's not you, it's me. That's a messed up thing to say to people. It's not you, it's me. But it's so true. There are so many people who are screwed up. And sometimes when they say it's not you, it's me, they're not lying. And you should take solace in that. If you ever get broken up with, if somebody ever breaks up with you and they say, it's not you, it's me, maybe they're a train wreck. Maybe they're not lying. And I think the assumption there is that when someone says it's not you, it's me, they're lying. But sometimes they're not lying. And as much as I appreciate you listening to this show, the 5 of you and the 4 that accidentally stumbled upon it thinking that it was a sci-fi podcast, thank you for listening. But it's not about you, it's about me. I used to share my podcast episodes on Reddit, on the podcasting Reddit. And unsolicited, one time, somebody gave me feedback on my show. I wasn't asking for feedback. They just gave it to me. And I can understand how they might have mistaken my post for a feedback post, a feedback request, but it wasn't. But basically what they told me is like, you know what? Your show is poorly named, The Great Big Intergalactic. What is this show even about? It sounds like a sci-fi podcast. Well, it kind of evolved because I couldn't have a longer name. It was supposed to originally be The Great Big Intergalactic Search for Good Music, and I got away from that. So I just shortened it to The Great Big Intergalactic, and it's not a music podcast. I think I had like 2 episodes about music. He said, your content varies too much. Yes, it does. Deal with it. One episode is 15 minutes about how much you dislike dogs. And the next one is an interview about Mormonism. And as annoying as that is for you as a listener, imagine what it's like to be me. That is who I am. I'm a very inconsistent person. My mind is all over the place. If I do something repeatedly, I don't know how somebody does a podcast on. Well, actually, you know what? We did it with the Cleveland podcast. We talked about Cleveland every time. And my co-host was exactly the same as me because he could have cared less to talk about Cleveland after a couple of episodes. And he just would take it in any other direction that he could. And I'm like, dude, this is about, this show's about Cleveland, right? But he wanted to get away from it. And I can't blame him because I'm the exact same way. And that's probably why we were good co-hosts. Is because just our interests were all over the place. And I don't understand repetition. I ask people like online, why do you like repetition? Why do you like a routine? Because I feel like routine is hell to me. To a point. I even get into it myself. I like knowing what's going to happen the next day. Like I guess to a point, routine is a good thing. But what's the Thoreau quote? Let me look it up. Or is it Pink Floyd? Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way. That one. But I think that comes from Thoreau, right? The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. I feel like routine leads to quiet desperation. I have lived in 3 different cities in 3 years, and I thrive upon it. The lack of routine, is what keeps me alive, is what keeps me driven, is what keeps me from, well, I guess, quiet desperation, But let's be clear here. I am glad that a lot of you do like routine. I'm really glad that some of you can become doctors, that some of you can stick your head in your books and just read and read and read and study and study and study. And, I've always thought that there's like this fine line between somebody who is a serial killer and a doctor, but that line is enormous. They both want to like chop people up and look inside, but one of them is like saving the world and the other one is like pretty creepy, right? But thank God that somebody out there wants to cut people up. I don't. I'm glad that you do. Like if you're a doctor, not if you're a serial killer. But yeah, I'm glad that some of you love routine because I think that the world is very dependent upon you loving your routine, But back to what I was actually talking about. This podcast is never going to be consistent. It's never going to have a theme. It's going to be 12 minutes one time and about how much I dislike dogs. Yep. If you remember that episode. And the next time, it's going to be about crashing a satellite into an asteroid. I'm sorry if you don't like that. I don't understand how somebody could do the same podcast over and over and over and over and over again. If it's like really specific and it doesn't vary. And like I was talking about with my former co-hosts, we just couldn't get away from the subject of Cleveland fast enough. But yeah, so during the last like month and a half or 2 months or whatever, I just wasn't drinking at all. And I did one podcast where I was completely sober, and it was actually a pretty good one. So maybe I should do more sober podcasts. But for the most part, I just like to have a few drinks and jabber into the microphone. This is really the first day of me having a drink. So I'm back to podcasting. Yeah, when I podcast, I drink, or when I drink, I podcast, kind of thing. But anyways, I'm the reason that I haven't been podcasting isn't because I've lost interest in podcasting. I just kind of want to do a better job. I just want to kind of separate the quality episodes from the kind of more loose ones. And again, like I just talked about, it's going to be very inconsistent. One episode is going to be me drinking and talking about how much I dislike barky dogs. And the next one's going to be like more serious and scripted. And then maybe the next one will be me joking and interviewing. And it's just who I am, And maybe I'd feel differently if I had more listeners or if I was in any way being compensated for any of this. But I'm not, and it isn't. It is what it is. You can either listen or you don't have to. And I think a lot of you have chosen that second option. Not a lot of you, a lot of others. And I don't care because, again, it's not you, it's me. So basically the point of all this is just that I'm going to probably try to do one of two things. It's almost like there should be 2 different podcasts, but I don't have time to make 2 different podcasts, or maybe 3 or 4, I'm either going to do like a serious scripted show or like just a loose, silly show where I probably drink too much, And it is what it is. If you don't like it, just like the other 7 billion people in the world, you just don't listen, You don't have to listen to every episode of every show. And I love that all 5 of you listen. Thank you for listening. All 5 of you. All right, thanks for being here. You've been listening to The Great Big Intergalactic. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to the show. The Great Big Intergalactic can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Apple iTunes, and anywhere else that podcasts can be heard. If social media is your thing, you can follow the program on Facebook or Twitter. If you enjoy the show, upvote, share, like, and subscribe. Whenever and wherever those things can be done. If you'd like to send feedback, the easiest way to do that is to email the show at tgbiuniverse@gmail.com, TGBI as in the Great Big Intergalactic, or you can leave a voicemail at 216-200-7940. Contributions could include written feedback, audio submissions, voicemails, or potentially even live guests. It was great having you today, and see you next time.